Welcome, 100 kids everywhere. It's time for us to have the talk. It's 100 Talk. I'm your dad, Cole. That's your dad, Jordan. And we're coming to you in a very critical and important and meaningful time in your life where things are going to change. And part of that change is 100 Thieves heading into playoffs from 7th place.
7th, Cole. That's not the place I was hoping you'd say this week.
Yeah, a lot happened on our way to the LCS playoffs. And one of those things that happened is we tripped out of the gate trying to get to the upper bracket. But surely more on that is to come. We're just happy to see everybody back.
Welcome back, everybody. We're all still friends. We're all still great friends.
Family.
In fact, family. I'm friends with my family. I don't know how you feel. We can be both. It's not exclusive.
For sure.
Cole, it's hard not to feel disappointed. Have I said that before? Have I said that exact same thing?
Yes.
At any point in this season, this
often
truly cursed year that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, you know what? We're just embodying the 2020 curse to the full extent of the law. Yeah. Poome's in chat. Welcome back, Poome. Good to see you again.
Hey, Poome.
Poome hung out last week. He's back.
We're never sad to see you.
Yeah.
It's always good to see you, bud. We are still the Poome gang.
We are still Poome gang. We are still Poomers.
Because we got the playoffs ahead of us. I mean, let's not be mistaken. This thing could still result. We could still be at Worlds, Cole, in like however many months that is.
Chat, do you see how much more excited Jordan gets when Poome shows up? Poome has that effect on people.
Who doesn't Poome have that effect on people?
Well, look, before we go there, we're contractually obligated and also quite pleased to mention that 100 Talk is powered by Rip It Energy Fuel. I have a green and silver can, so you're getting the nice green screen phasing effect. I'm drinking Tribute. Oh, Jordan's got Tribute too. And not only am I going to enjoy a fresh Tribute tonight, I also got a little goodie package today, unexpectedly. Something showed up at my doorstop here.
Look at that. Is that a shoebox?
I'm looking forward to opening this thing. Yeah, it's like a custom shoebox, and I'm not yet sure what's in there.
I hope it's shoes that you can put a Rip It in to drink later.
Shoot, with a Camelback straw like coming up your leg, you loop it through your pants.
Yeah. Usually that's for a different kind of medical procedure, I believe. But we'll take the Rip It bag, for sure.
But yes, that was a nice surprise from Rip It. So later, actually probably tomorrow, on our Twitter, I'll post a little unboxing video. We'll all find out together what's in there. But in the meantime, thank you, Rip It, for sending that along to us. And now I'm going to crack mine.
For giving us the energy fuel we need to get through a long show of podcasts, Cole. Long night of podcasts, I mean.
That's right, because not only are we doing 100 Talk right now, but at around 10 o'clock or so, we're going to do Fast Peek last week and take a look at the weird weekend in Valorant. So plenty of just goofy, weird stuff to talk about for 100 Thieves fans tonight.
Perfect. Love it.
And without further ado, then let's go ahead and kick it off. So
let's do it.
We had what seemed to be a fairly winnable and not too debated game against Dignitas to start off the weekend. Just a reminder what the stakes were. We were trying to get into sixth place, which would give us upper bracket for the playoffs, meaning we do have a double elimination chance. To do so, we had to at least tie EG in the standings. Now, us playing EG, that meant that we could beat Dignitas and beat EG, and we'd be good.
Yep.
Depending on some circumstances. Well, we did not win our game against Dignitas. F's in the chat. In fact, it was, in true 100T style, quite the crusher of a loss.
There's something about Dignitas. There's something about beating us after a long and drawn out game. I don't know how. I mean, it's an entirely different organization. It used to be Clutch. Somehow they're still doing this to us. The roster is different and new. There are different people on it. How does this continue to happen, Cole? I have no idea. I don't know. I wish I knew. It hurts just as bad every time.
Yep, and you never get used to that sad feeling. That feeling of emptiness and despair.
I thought about tweeting something like analytical after I watched the game live, which is a rare treat this weekend.
Same here.
But all I could muster was just to write gross. That was just gross, dude.
Hmm.
It felt bad. It felt slimy. Like the, what a demoralizing way to end a long and hard fought game.
Yeah. So, in case you're under a rock, what ended up being, what was it, 47 minutes, somewhere in that neighborhood?
215 minutes, maybe. That's what it felt like.
Where we basically got macroed to death by Dignitas and tried to take a second Baron, which we successfully did, but in the process got backdoored, as is becoming a familiar story for us, and ended up dropping the game, which if we were able to reset right there, we were probably in a pretty dang good position to close out that game. So
Empowered recalls. Cole, the only analogy I can make here is that it was like one of those nightmares you have where you see something happening and you're running as fast as you can and you realize you're actually slogging through mud and you can't get there. That is what it felt like. As a fan, I'm imagining a player had a similar experience because we just could not back. We just couldn't back.
Yeah.
There was no way to do it.
And in a shocking turn of events, we got hit by both True Shot Barrage interrupting like everybody's recall because we all decided to group up in the same spot on the recall. And then a Luden's proc also canceling recalls and thus ending the game. So
that was the proc off the Nidalee Spear that killed Ryoma, right? So it got
I
a kill.
So. Mm-hmm.
And it got a Luden's proc, which stopped a whole bunch of people.
Yeah. So a real heartbreaker. A real heartbreaker. Yeah. Now it left us with some questions along the way. And we're going to talk through some of those things. And Jordan, I don't know, actually, looking at this rundown, where you want to start. Do you have a preference?
Let's talk about Ssumday.
Okay.
I love to talk about Ssumday.
We love Ssumday.
Yeah.
He played a champ in this game that is not, like, let's say it's not the preferred champ for Ssumday to be on, according to 100T Redditors. Is that fair?
Yeah. And typically I don't consider myself in that set of people you talked about. Not because I feel a certain way about them. I just am not a Reddit user. I used to be a heavy Reddit user, but I broke that habit, Cole.
But you quit.
Yeah. Yep. And but I think we're on the same page on this one. And I have reached a point, Cole, some might call it a breaking point, where I feel quite emphatically that this is not the champ. Oh, breaking point. That I'm hoping to see us play in the playoffs. And someday on Ornn.
Someday on Ornn.
That ain't it, boss.
Now, for this split, it has not been it either. He's 0-3 on Ornn this split, including this game. So I thought it was actually 0-3, and then this was 0-4. But looking back, he's 0-3 this split on that champion, which is always interesting because even though he has that record on the champ, it doesn't necessarily ever really seem like it's his fault at the same time. So something about him on the tank play style is not clicking for the rest of the team. Perhaps putting our carry bet into other lanes is not working out the way that we want it to.
Yes. And I think that's the point we've reached, right? In this experiment, this grand experiment called 2020, I think it's safe to say, even if it's not his most comfortable play style, if it's not the team's most comfortable play style, I just think that we have a better shot at winning any given game if Ssumday at least has the opportunity to absolutely take it over, right? And that is not, so this is one of the themes I want to maintain in this whole podcast, because we are at the end of 2020 regular season and there's still games to play, make no mistake, and we are in playoffs, so that is good. But I think that the time to be aspirational has ended for this roster, right? And I think now you have to shift into get it done mode. What can you do to make the most of the opportunity ahead of you, right? To a certain degree, the regular season, it doesn't matter. Let me hedge that, because the only teams that go to Worlds are the top 3 teams in playoffs. So you have to bring your best look to playoffs, and anything other than that is wasted effort and wasted energy. So you have the opportunity to, and you should experiment in the regular season and try different things and see if you can find something. We did exactly that, right? We changed our roster significantly. We made what I think a lot of people consider to be improvements. The job ahead of us is to play with this roster as best as we possibly can. And what I'm getting at is I think you have to put somebody on a carry or a split push. And I think anything else, you risk throwing away the season via playoffs, right? It's just too unreliable. And I guess in this case, you'd say it is reliably unproductive to have him on anything other than a carry or a split.
Yeah, which is, again, the reason why this is an interesting point is because he himself does not do poorly on said champions.
Right.
All things considered. Now, really, like, I don't know. It depends on how you draw these definitions for tanks and everything, but Ornn being like a tank kind of top laner or whatever, he's 0-3 on that. If you want to consider Gangplank a tank, depending on the build, Ssumday is 2-0 on Gangplank this split, so there is that. But in my opinion, it's not really the same thing. He's not really building it the same way. And then he's 0-2 on Aatrox, which again, you can build that to be more tanky, but not so much, you know. So I don't really consider either of those other champions tanks, but you know, those are the champions where he's not on something more immediately threatening, like a Camille or whatever. And while the Gangplank, he's won a couple games, Aatrox, he's dropped a couple. So it's kind of like a weird nut to crack.
Yeah. Yep. I think I agree with that. And the thing that, the thing that is frustrating as a fan, and I'm positive is frustrating for him as well, is he does play it well.
Yeah.
Right. And he does show up as Ornn in these fights, and he hits his ults well. And either the damage is not there to follow, or he tanks 4 people for, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And then he dies. And it's like, well, great. That awesome. That felt great. So it's not, there was one fight in particular I was thinking of in that game where he was just down in the bot lane, just getting beat up for so long, and heroic effort, nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
Or very little to show for it.
Right. And so one of the reasons I think that we bring this up and make this point is because we have seen in previous splits when the fan base has wanted him to not be on a tanky champ, but actually in terms of results-based analysis, it's better for the team to have him on that champ. So that was the story of most of 2019, in fact. This being a different story. So the rest of the roster changes that have happened since then have made it so that that is not viable for us. And I think that's fairly clear right now, but it all comes down to something that we're going to talk about in more detail later, which is, are we drafting towards our specific team and our specific players and what they're good at, or are we drafting to what's nice on paper for team comps and what tends to work if there are no name plates involved? So
I think that's exactly it. I think that's such an important point. And I think it must be hard, right? Like when you are given these opportunities. I remember specifically, I believe this split or sometime recently, we picked up an Ornn for Ssumday because it was so strong in the meta. And I don't think it went in our favor, right? What we're learning is the success of this team is not tied to conventional expectations, right? You can't really look at the champions that we're able to draft and say, well, we should definitely win this game. And I think it's because what we're learning is, and what 2020 summer is telling us is, we just do a lot better with very specific types of compositions. So that's where I want us to not get caught into the trap of thinking like, oh my gosh, it's so on meta, right? Like, let's say like Akali is left open for us. And this is a bad example because I think that would actually fit pretty well in our team comp. But, like as these new champs get buffed, if there is one of those champs that is actually going to cause us to play this same like aimless and sleepy style, let's just pass. Let's just agree that we're not going to play it. And if they want to try, they can. Instead, let's lock in Olaf, right? Like, let's get the Olaf. Let's get the Camille, maybe a Lucian, right? Let's see some of these other champs. I think they just buffed Lucian again, perhaps. So
did not see whether they did or did not, but
I think they added a couple of bullets to his ult.
Oh, nice. Culling gets a little bit of a buff. Cool.
I might be wrong.
Well, that is the Ssumday discussion, which we'll rehash in some form later. One of the big questions from this game that I want to put out there, because I think that a lot of this was knee-jerk reaction, both from me and then for a lot of other people, was the question of like, despite how everything went, we still had chances to win this game, and we were still there, right? And we even had a gold lead when we lost this game. So we were able to take down some important objectives and put ourselves in a position where we could win, depending on if we just kept the Camille split lane pressure at bay.
Yeah.
One of those things that happened along the way was that we got Elder buff.
Mm-hmm.
We marched down mid lane, and earlier on a Baron push, I believe we had gotten some work done in both top and mid. And then when we had Elder buff, we didn't continue to push on. We didn't look for fights, and it felt weird. It felt like a lot of people were saying, like, why didn't we just try and end the game? Why didn't we fight and win the game? Interesting thing, when you watch the replay, there was a specific play that Aframu made that the casters called out, which, Aframu went into the mid lane at like the middle of the map, and he cut down a wave that we had coming in.
Yep.
And the guys that were in base, their wave was basically like, I think it was like one melee minion and then maybe a cannon with like barely any health or something. But basically we did not have any wave in there. So it got cleared out. And then we did not have another wave coming back. Guys were in a tough position to make that call. And I'm not, honestly, when I watch it, I get why we backed off, and I'm not sure how things would go if we stayed and fight. I agree with the fact, and Jordan, you tell me where you come down on this, that it would be nice to push for fights when we have that Elder buff. You got like a minute 15 left on it. Surely you can find some way to fight during that time, but we were not able to get that opportunity, which probably would have secured us that game.
Yeah, I mean, the unlike the Baron buff, the Elder buff does absolutely nothing for you if you're not fighting the enemy team, right? There's my challenger level analysis of this. But it is kind of interesting in that, as the enemy team, if you can fully avoid a fight and just turtle up and protect your base and proxy a wave, that was a big brain play from Afro. You can largely mitigate that buff entirely. And that's kind of what we saw. There just wasn't a fight that we felt comfortable taking to provide us with that decisive closure to the match where we had the opportunity to. I think it's one of those where you look back and there's woulda, coulda, shouldas aplenty. Maybe you push that much more aggressively. It's kind of like a Phantom Siege buff where you have a normal minion wave, but you can go ahead and take some shots at the turret because do they really want to step up and challenge you? So, but watching it was kind of this moment where I was like, oh no, the whole thing is passing and we're not actually gaining any meaningful ground. And I think the same thing happened with the Baron buff, if I'm not mistaken, where by the time the Baron buff ended, we had exactly as much gold gained as we got from the Baron. Was that this game?
I don't remember. I don't remember that being the specific case, but
similar example, right? Where it's just like we were, for whatever reason, we were having a hard time converting this buff in a meaningful advantage. And as a result, it made it possible for them to just kind of continue playing their game, right? There was not, with the split push comp, it all goes great if you can hold your own 4v5.
Yeah.
4v, if you demand that one. If you lose a person, it falls apart pretty quickly, right? Because then you're 3v4 or 5, and that's a losing fight every time. So we didn't need a lot. We just needed one good pick.
Yeah.
And to Dig's credit, they played it smart and they kept us from getting even that, which meant that they were in a position to do exactly what they wanted to do at the end of that game.
Yeah. So let's actually use that as a jump off point and do another brief conversation, which is the way I'm phrasing this, which may not make sense, but let me just explain where I'm coming from is, were we out macroed in that game or just macroed?
Right.
So was it that like, we got totally like 3D chest on the macro game by the split push of Viper, or is that just like what we expected from that and we played it as well as could be expected and the rest was just like good macro play from Dig, not necessarily bad macro play from us? Where do we come down on that?
I mean, I think this starts with the draft, right? We get Ornn 5th pick. they get Camille 6 pick. So they know that they're taking Camille into Ornn. This was one of those sad and frustrating occasions where, despite Ssumday's, I'll just say, despite his ability to beat his lane opponent, he couldn't beat him. There's just not enough damage in the kit. The best he could do was try to slow it down.
Yeah.
And, again, Viper, he played it really smart. He did a good job on that. But I think that it was the team comp that led to us being put in a position where we really didn't have a great macro answer to this. It's not like it was a secret what they were trying to do. It just meant that matching them meant losing. And what we needed to do was find a way to punish them, right? Which we couldn't really do, reference our elder discussion, so that this very straightforward idea of theirs was no longer executable. And that didn't materialize. And they just kept doing it. They kept grinding down and down and down. It was very interesting to even listen to the casters say, what Viper should do here is actually not try to fight Ssumday, just fight the turret. And then once he gets, once the turret does some damage to you, then leave. And then like the very next wave, he does exactly that.
Yeah.
And it's half the turret gone. And there's nothing that Ssumday could do differently, right? There's just not enough damage fast enough in the kit, even if you use your ult, to stop him from doing what he's going to do.
I was going to say, yeah, he did that later, and it was called out, I think, by Azalea as kind of a weird early ult or whatever, but I actually thought it was great. It was like, no, he's clearing the wave to try and discourage Viper from hanging around, right? Like maybe Viper takes a quick recall or something like that, and then you buy yourself some time. Maybe the engage makes him think that he's got some backup there, because I don't think at that time Viper could see everybody on the map. So, yeah, I mean, like, I kind of tend to agree, or it's like, I'm not sure what else we could really do. I mean, one of the things pointed out by Mont in chat is that we still got 2 Barons and an Elder while this was going on. You know what I mean? Right. So we're still playing the objective game and winning that for the most part, even though I think they did get the Cloud Soul.
Yeah, they got Cloud Soul.
Which was Viper by himself soloing that.
Right. Yeah, just playing his different game. He had a different instance of League of Legends up, and he was winning it. That was the thing that was so frustrating. It's like, but it was because of how well Viper was splitting that we couldn't do anything with that, right? Because if you leave that lane, he wins. And he was so fast at that point that it was very difficult for us to leave it at all. And we just constantly had to be backing and answering his split push, and we'd send 3 people back. It was like it just completely chopped up any kind of rhythm or momentum we could get. So yeah, that's what happened. That's enough about that. Is it out macroed or macroed? I think that the onus is on us once we've identified what they're doing to adapt. And I don't think we adapted, right? We didn't say, all right, Zoe, land a bubble, sneaky on down there and land a bubble over the wall. And then he's snoozing, easy kill. And then we have a Baron buff and a 50-second death timer on Camille. That's game, right?
Interesting you say that, because at one point that did happen in the top lane when he was splitting down top, where Ryoma came in, he bubbled him, got his GA out, and I actually don't remember. We might have gotten the kill on him, and then it ended up in a kind of a disastrous thing. But that's actually a good segue into Ryoma discussion, because I think we need to have one of those. We're now officially at the end of the regular season, right? So we're to the time where you and I had declared at this point we should have a good idea about what Ryoma is and the direction where he's going. And there was, immediately following this game, a ton of Ryoma hate on my Twitter feed. I saw a lot of complaining about how just like awful he played the whole game. I wanted to dig into that a bit, because I think that there's a fairness to that in several big ways, but at the same time, I do think that we're doing what we tend to do as fans and blowing some things out of proportion. Yeah. And whereas I myself, and I said this last week, I feel like we're in a position now where if we want to compete for a domestic title, we probably have to find a different answer, barring some insane happenings in the off season. But it is worth going through and seeing what Ryoma did in this game to be more objective and more honest about everything that happened. So the question is, Ryoma Zoe, how bad was it? If you read Twitter, you would be led to believe that he didn't do a single good thing all game. I found that he played like a pretty good game, actually, except for several key moments that were mistakes. So lots of players can make mistakes during the game and kind of get away with it, right? He made mistakes that you cannot really salvage. And that really just erased everything else that he did. One of the things that we've called out with his Zoe is that we want to see him landing bubbles, landing paddle stars, and poking people
That's
out.
all you can do, really.
Right.
That's the kit.
And I think that he did not do an excellent job of that, but he did not do nothing, as Twitter would lead you to believe. There were many times where he was landing key bubbles. He landed big paddle stars. He's taking more than half of people's health bars away. Like, that's what you want to see. Okay. So that being said, let's go through some of the mistakes that actually did happen. So I would say overall, he played a better Zoe game than we usually see, but some of these mistakes were things that are fairly catastrophic. So if you watch back the whole VOD, which I did specifically with this question in mind, you will see some things like missing CS in lane that he shouldn't miss. Like, and that's not like a once or twice thing. Like that happened a fair amount. His first real like substantial mistake was his death at 17 minutes into the game. He was in mid lane under tier 1 turret. He was trying desperately to clear a wave as they were 3-manning it to save the wave. But I think it should have been fairly obvious that his chances of that were very slim to defend that. So the turret dies, and then he Zhonya's and still goes down. And in the process, it appeared he like tried to TP. Like this must have been a mistake, but he burnt his TP during this fight somehow. And the casters were kind of confused about it on the back end, but all of that, like, so first of all, you give away the kill when you probably should have just given the turret. And you also like waste one of your summoners, which, 17 minutes into the game, that can happen right before a key objective or something. You're not going to have that cooldown available for a big fight.
Huge deal.
It's a big deal, right? So
TP timers is like one of the most important things in the game, I'd say.
So he played fine up until 17 minutes, and then that happened. 4 minutes later, he's caught too far up in top lane. This is 20 minutes in, and he dies. We have a fight on the back end of this that initially actually looks good for us. But then Johnson like goes off on the Ezreal from over the wall and really turns the fight. And when you look at the results, it's like 3 or 4 of them walked away with such little health bars. Like they barely survived this. And then I think 3 of us died in the total exchange. So it ended up being a huge deal. That was almost like almost overextension from them, overcommitment that they were punished really hard for. So that play breaks really weird. But nonetheless, he got caught out being up too far without vision in the jungle, which should be a fairly obvious thing. Like if you look, they do not have the vision to justify being up that far. Then another 4 minutes later, 25 minutes of the game, that is when Ssumday is in bot side of the 1v3 tier 2 turret. And Ryoma tries to TP to the turret when the turret is like basically 5% HP. And so the TP is wasted again. Now, if he TPs to a minion, he gets there in time. We possibly could fight this off. I'm not sure that's definitively the case, but what we got out of it was a totally wasted TP and Ssumday definitely dying.
That's probably the fight I was thinking about, where he's just down there by himself for a long time.
Right. And then, so unequivocally a mistake. And then the final significant thing is he did not have an Ornn upgradable item until 44 minutes into the game.
Wow.
So 44 minutes is when he gets his death cap. And then that is then upgraded to whatever they call it.
Yeah.
That is a big one too. All right. Because Ssumday is basically just sitting. He's been level 18 for a long time and he's just waiting to like give over that item and he can't. Right. That's a missed opportunity.
On that item specifically, receiving an Ornn upgrade might mean that some of those, half bar paddle stars become 3/4. Right. Maybe a full kill. Like
on a squishy.
That could be the difference. Yeah.
So again, those are mistakes that are significant and cost us like serious damage and serious harm in there. That said, like the rest of the game, man, I thought he was fairly effective. So it's one of those that we've always kind of had, which is there's some bad that comes along with the good, and the measure of that is not always, the bad is tending to outweigh the good, and that's an unfortunate reality because I want this dude to succeed really bad.
Yeah.
But right now, I mean, I can't have full confidence in anything other than Galio, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. Here comes Galio. Let me ask you this then. Summarize what you've just said to me. Does it change in any meaningful way what you've been saying of the last few weeks, which is, there are some things he does well. There are other things he doesn't do well. There are mistakes he makes. Does it change your thought on where we go for 2021?
I'm not sure it changes my thought, because I think my thought all along has been, if he doesn't become a provable commodity in 2020, then we continue the search. Yep. And I don't think at this point, I mean, he's got the playoff run left in him, but I think that the only thing we've seen enough consistency out of him on is the Galio. You know? And it's kind of crazy to say that too, because what has it been? Has it been 3 games or just 2 that he's had? Definitely 2, maybe 3 games where he's looked good. Yeah. So, it's kind of hard to like see, oh yeah, that's the proven commodity when it's just 2 or 3 times, but there is just
he's looked really good.
Yeah,
when he's
there's just such a stark difference on it,
Yeah.
So, and chat's pointing out that there are upgradable items, like in the literal sense, upgradable items that he had, but it's not like in pro play, like you don't upgrade those items, so. But yeah, so I don't think Ryoma. I don't think like my opinion of that has changed. It's just been like we've revealed enough about him now that it's like, unless he really, really goes off in playoffs, I think we continue searching.
Yeah, I want to come back to something, which is just, like, what is the next logical thought when you state what you've stated and you said, I think we keep searching. There are questions then that you ask, right? Sequentially. I don't want to talk about that now because I want to keep talking about the games and kind of what we've seen there. But I do want to come back to that at some point today, which is just what now, right? And barring this kind of this miracle playoff run from Ryoma specifically, where we all say, oh my, something clicked, and now here we are. What do we do? I also want to talk about Bard a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Not a whole lot.
Go for it.
So we've talked about Ornn. We talked about Galio, right? Like, we're starting to see the things that really work well, right? And everybody knew. The thing with contracts is everybody knew. Get them on an early game. Like, we're not picking Sejuani for contracts, because if we did, people would know we were trolling. We would be exposed. I think that what I'm starting to see with Poome is I think there are a number of champions we've seen him play to a very high degree of success. Like, I'm thinking back to his initial Rakan game, right? That was the game where I was absolutely floored. I was just blown away. And I knew then that we had a differential talent that we were bringing in, right? With upside that we weren't familiar with up to that point. I don't think Bard is that same champion for him. I just don't think he's there yet.
Yeah.
And that's fine, right? In the same way that I would say, let's please not put Ssumday on Ornn. I'm saying the same thing for Poome on Bard. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it fits into our team. I don't see him utilizing the kit to the fullness that he does other champs. We talked last week about the way he absolutely took over on TK with some stuff that you wouldn't expect, right? The flash forward, the heal, the devour, if that's what it's called, right? All of that to save contracts, and I don't feel like you see those same flashes of either comfort or brilliance, probably some mixture of the two, when he's on Bard. And at this point, that's not to say that I never want to see it drafted from him again. I don't want to see it in playoffs. I don't think that's a good look for us at this point in the game. Everything is on the table. And I don't think we can afford to take a maybe bet on Bard when he's shown that there are so many different champs he can play. For me, the question just becomes, what's the compelling reason to pick Bard for him? Because if it's so that you can Bard ult a tower and negate a Shelly, like, don't. That's not it. That's not worth it. I know there's a lot more you can do, but it's like, I'm not seeing the other things come through that give me the confidence that he can actually turn a game. But when you see him play Tahm Kench, when you see him play Rakan or Karma or Lulu, like he's just done that a number of times, Thresh, where I'm like, okay, he's got a big enough champion pool. You can't ban him out completely. You can't even ban and pick him out completely. So let's keep the other options out there and not pigeonhole ourselves into this one pick that I think he's just not showing the same mastery on.
Though I do want to shout out his defensive ults because he had
those were great.
Really nice defensive ults in that game.
They were very they would get both carries or like the entire bottom lane.
Yeah.
So those were good. That's true. Thanks for keeping me honest.
Though it doesn't look the same as say Core JJ on Bard, where it's very offensive and just brutal against you, right? And unfortunately, Poome himself was on the receiving end of that before. But yeah, so I agree with that in general. But yeah, I as I've said before, I'm not particularly worried about Poome or his champ pool or anything because I think he's looked good on enough that we feel comfortable on anything else we've seen really, except for the Bard, and it's really not even that bad. Not this game at least.
And that might be part of like maybe the Bard looks completely different if Camille's in the game, right? And he just has that many more people who can, win a fight for us.
Right.
Yeah.
It's possible. So we actually got into some of these things a lot deeper than anticipated. So do you want to just move on to the EG game? In that case? Okay. I think there's less to say about the EG game.
Oh, great.
I will say I tweeted that if this weekend wasn't like a perfect encapsulation of what it's like to be a 100T fan, I don't know what is, because we have like this should be pretty winnable game that actually is kind of important for us to win in the playoff picture. And we fumble it in a heartbreaking way that takes a long time to resolve. I think I tweeted, I would have rather lost that in 30 minutes than to lose it the way it happened. Then we turn around when it no longer matters, and we look like this insane steamroll team where we're just like destroying people, and it's like not even a contest 10 minutes in, That is such a 100 Thieves way of doing things. Like, and it's so frustrating to see that sometimes, man. We have this ceiling that just looks so crazy. And it seems like we play closer to that ceiling when there's not as much like at stake, right? Like think about the C9 game where it wasn't just like, okay, now the line about C9 now is, oh, well, right now their form's not very good. It's really not that impressive to beat them. I've said over and over again, in that game, it wasn't just that we were, taking advantage of bad play or whatever. We actively were punishing like everything, and we had a definite plan. We capitalized on the plan. We executed the strategy basically to perfection in that game. So you cannot tell me that wasn't 100T playing at an insanely high level, because it was. And I think going into that game, there was zero expectation that we would win it. Right. No. So the weight of expectations is maybe a thing for the team. I don't know. But in this game, they weren't really there because this game doesn't do anything other than set the tone for playoffs. Now, interestingly enough, EG is a likely matchup for us in our first playoff series, right? EG is going to play FlyQuest. I think EG's current form has been much worse than they were in the first half of the split. FlyQuest actually more impressive than I ever gave them credit for. So I think it's highly likely that Fly takes down EG and we play them. So to go in and steamroll them, where again, this wasn't even really a contest, not bad timing on that, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, talk about making the most out of a game that truly doesn't have implications in the standings. Like, that's the best you could hope for. And you kind of need it. Even if it were a close back and forth affair, people would be like, well, you guys got this one. They've learned a little bit more about you. So watch out for the series, right? If you're talking best of 5, it's going to be best of 5 for us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you're talking best of 5, then you've just showed them one look. Now, with this win, it's like, yeah, we showed them a look, and all they learned basically was like, if we mess up in draft or in game, they can absolutely destroy us. So that is really best case scenario. Again, in a game where you're not going to move up the standings if you win. And let it be said that Dig is on the up, right? Like they won out. They have
That's
a pretty
fair.
good recent record. So, you know, it's possible that Dig is just figuring things out at the right time. Did they beat Cloud9? I don't watch Dig that closely. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think they'd be in playoffs.
Hold on. I don't want to speak out of turn, so I'm making sure I'm right when I say that no, they did not. Yeah, they lost.
Okay.
I think
it was close.
I was going to say I think it was winnable is what I remember.
It was this weekend, I want to say. No, it was
previous weekend.
Last weekend.
They played
them
CLG,
closer than I think people give them credit for.
No, it was this weekend. They played
They didn't win out.
Yeah, it was Friday. That's right.
Look at this. Look at me. This is not the Dig podcast, Cole. I'm not expected to know what their schedule's looking like. Anyway, Dig's looking better, right?
Sure.
So Ichi's not, which is actually why I wouldn't be mad if we met up with them in our first series in playoffs, because I think we actually have a pretty good chance at that. And this is the game that kind of it settled all of this stuff in for me, right? And I don't know how you want to approach all these topics, but I liked everything I saw, right? There's nothing where I thought, that's an okay idea. I see what they were going for, but let's reconsider that. Like, nah, run this draft back, right? Just do the exact same draft. It's time for a run back on this when we hit playoffs, especially if we're up against EG, and shame on them if they let us get this draft again. But we're starting to like the hot or cold thing, or the whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's not hot or cold, but whatever that you call this weekend, which has happened a few times now, where we
the roller coaster of love
get demolished, and then we absolutely demolish somebody. We turn around and do the exact same thing to them. I'm starting to notice a pattern, and I'm not a data guy, and I haven't run like a regression analysis to say what this is, but I think I feel pretty confident that there are certain champions when we draft Cole, we tend to do better.
Yeah. So quickly to hit those points, if they're not obvious. Ryoma looks like an entirely different beast on Galio.
Yep.
And it's not just like we talk all the time about how it's a more supportive, facilitating champion for him. It's a little bit tankier, so he can survive more situations or whatever. But it's not just that. I mean, the mechanics even looking nasty. And his Galio a lot of times, like when he was in that like bot lane engage toward the end of the game, which by the way only lasted 24 minutes. That was a 24-minute win. Absolutely nasty. Like Proto Belt killed Bang, I think it was.
Yeah. Oh, this is one they
while
pre-played?
Like landing taunts and stuff. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that weirdness, production weirdness, where they ran the replay before real life.
One of the strangest
scripted,
things
proved, Rito exposed. That was so nasty, man. That sequence, I was like, oh,
yeah.
And
I mean, I think that's it, right? It's like, it's not like some players where you're like, okay, it's safer if you just get him on the Galio, put him on the Galio and see what he can do. It should be fine. It's like, get him on the Galio and let him go, right? He's going to pop off.
Yeah.
He feels more like a carry threat when he's playing Galio than a lot of these other champs, which is where I'm kind of confused, I guess. But he just starts flowing, man. He's got full control of the kit. He's landing everything on cooldown. Feels fantastic.
It kind of reminds me of like the LCK Galio of past splits, where just totally looks super dominant and flashy even,
Right.
So he's 3-0 on the champ. I think it's safe to say that he will not be allowed to play it. I think if you're drafting against us, it's worth the ban every time.
I think so.
He's looked okay on Syndra. But there are like not a whole lot of champs that you want to like immediately say, oh yeah, he's got like Ryoma's going to be a force on this one. So if you use a ban on Galio, I think that's a wise choice.
Yeah, and it might be cool that this dream comp that I've been describing, it falls apart if Galio's not in it, right? This one that I'm like, just draft that. I mean, you like to think about other champs who have a similar kind of presence on the Rift, like a TF. You and I have talked about Talia for him. Maybe that would be something we could think about just because of her mobility when it comes to navigating the jungle. Untested, and it's always a little bit nervy to try something new in playoffs. Not exactly the time you want to go for that, but right. If they ban the Galio, I don't know. There isn't for me a clear answer. What I will say is, hey, it's one less ban they have to throw at contracts or Ssumday, so that's good. We like that.
Yes. So the other thing that I think was very obvious has emerged about us is contracts. If contracts gets a good early game, it's basically GG's. Contracts, good early game is usually a win. Seems very, very clear. Some teams defend against that in draft better than others. In this game in particular, he was able to get the Nidalee locked in. Gosh, I kept wanting to say Graves, but that's because they play EG play Graves. He was able to lock the Nidalee. He's been basically the only person having sustained success on Nidalee, it seems like, in NA.
He brought it to NA.
And had a great looking game on it. Deathless and impacting things immediately, so that was very good. Man. Like if he does that, it seems pretty cut and dry that we're able to snowball. So
yeah.
The other, like, we're framing this whole thing in like, what is the provable, simple things about our team? Ryoma and Galio, good. Contracts, good early game, good. And then I think the last thing, Ssumday, we talked about it. He's shown on this carry that it's going to be a win.
Yes.
And his Camille looked very good.
Oh my gosh. As
always. Did end up going down once, but the whole game he looked great. Is it that simple, man? Like, can it really be that simple? Because let us not forget that, like, the other part of getting ready for playoffs, as you've mentioned, is giving the other team something to think about, right? So if we have these very clearly defined win conditions, that is good. However, you can be prepped for much easier if those win conditions are clearly defined and little in number. So,
I mean, I think C9 is a case point in that, right? Like, I think people, this is the debate. Are they solved? Are they slumping? What is it? We showed people how you can play against C9. The exact same is true for us, right? We're not a better C9 than C9. Like, it's not like we have figured out the way to play an aggressive early game focused comp that you can't counter. It's always going to be counterable, right? If this game were solvable in that way, League of Legends, we'd have a problem. So, but I think that's the point I'm at. It's like, let us lose playing that game rather than playing a meta, like power picks.
Right.
I'm much happier if we go down swinging in playoffs, having been out, like, aggroed, early gamed, than if we just try and fail to play the picks that should be strong in a way that we have not seen us do historically.
Yeah. Something that comes to mind is the DeMonte Kiana from Splits Pass, where, like, he had success on that champ to a higher level than other mid laners would have success on that champ, right? And ended up being able to do a lot for his team. Yeah. Sometimes, and actually, let's just use this as a transition point into our general topics. Sometimes what you have in your own personnel and the champs that they play isn't necessarily in harmony with the way you think about League of Legends in general. Yeah. One of the questions being then, how well do you think that our drafts have been matching the personnel that we have? I mean, an example of this is you're bringing up in this EG game. I saw some people, like, some league minds, shall we say, on Twitter, people who are much smarter about the game than I am and than you are, right? We're silver idiots, right? Talking about some of these matchups, like, really thinking that EG was in a better position than we were coming out of that draft. Okay.
Who's really the smarter analyst? Cole?
Clearly, it played out in a different direction, right? Like, so that's an example of when our draft is more in harmony of who we are than what is good League of Legends on paper, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think at the same time, I don't think we have a sterling record of drafting in this way, right?
It's I feel
Did
like
I cause you pain with that question?
Yes. This is what I feel like will be, as we look back on 2020, Cole, if there's any what if, it might be this. What if we just fully embraced who we are? What if we just accepted and tried to stop, like, what if we just spam carries for Ssumday? And if they ban out the pool, what if we just pick out like who is somebody else who has a high damage profile? Like, he's never played that top lane before, and it's not really meta. Like, but he's Ssumday. So I feel like that's what right now I'm left wondering. What if we just said, you know what? Let's just go for it. Oh well. What maybe worst thing that happens is we lose, and can we get those 3 Ornn games back and just give him Lucian?
Jordan's strategy for making it to Worlds. The worst that can happen is we lose.
We're already doing that, is what I'm getting at. We're already trying to play League of Legends, the computer video game, as people have ascribed it should be played at a professional level. And I just say it seems to go better when we just say, here's an idea. Let's give Ssumday a champion that he can win the game on. And can you think of anybody who's had more dominant split pushes than Ssumday in 2020? Like these 2 games, Lucian and Camille, he had the inhib turret cracked at, I think it was 14 minutes.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That was a 14-minute inhib turret.
14 minutes.
Yeah, we should have made that observation.
That's when turret plates fall. So I kind of want to just be that team. Let's just go for it, right? And maybe it doesn't work out, but maybe it does. Because I think that's what we're finding. And we've talked, this is not the first time we brought this up. The quality of our players across the board are not enough that you can just get the power picks and win games, right? I kind of think of a team like TL, where you see them more or less doing that, and they play this very traditional, steady League of Legends. They're not trying to snowball early. They're just trying to kind of, they're not making a lot of mistakes. They're winning games. It's worked really well. They've had their best split ever. They're blessed record-wise. But they have truly, world-class talent, demonstrably at all positions, basically. Tactical kind of being like the great surprise for them, this split. But they got Core JJ, they got Brox, they got Jensen. They have impact, right? We don't. That's not us. So I don't want us to try to be them. And I think we've come a long way in acknowledging that this split specifically by making the roster changes we have, bringing in contracts, bringing in Poome. I just want to see us go the rest of the way. Just because I don't know what would happen if we did at this point. It feels a little bit like we're still, and that's where we get these weird weekends where it's like you text me on Saturday and say, what is life? And then on Sunday we're having a party because turns out we're the strongest team in the league. I just don't get it. This pendulum is so wild.
That was a high quality rant you just went on.
Rant, and thank you.
That was very high quality.
I couldn't finish out the split without saying that.
Yeah. Enjoyed listening to that, man. Very well done. And it's much smarter than anything I have to say on the subject. But, the draft is most intimately tied to the coach at this point. We know it's a product of a whole bunch of things, but we have not really, as a pod, asked that question about Zikz.
Yeah.
Which is something that I think we should bring up and we should address, and that's how we're feeling about him. One of the things that surprised me was honestly the Dignitas draft did surprise me. I viewed the Dignitas game as kind of like a must-win for us because we secured that double elimination in the upper bracket.
Yep.
And we got this strange mixture of things we like and things we don't like. And we've before dismissed some of this as just trying to like figure things out along the way, like making sure we're not viewed as a one-dimensional team, because we need to get wins in other ways so teams don't feel like we can simply be prepared for. I think at that point, though, I'm looking for just a win at all costs, right? Because upper bracket is a serious advantage, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think if we get the upper bracket, we're going to go a lot farther or anything like that.
Right.
But double elimination is better than single elimination, no matter how you look at it, right? So, so to me, that's kind of a big deal. So that, plus some of the weirdness that we've seen with the drafting along the way, the question could be asked, like, how much of this do we want to attribute to him, and how accountable should we hold him? Do we think that his position is unsteady for the team or not? So any thoughts?
Yeah, I think to fully answer this question, you have to be familiar with details of the roster stuff that we're just not. I want to know who, you know, and let me just potentially put this all to bed by saying, if Poome started playing for Academy as soon as he was legally able to, there's your answer, right? you don't have the ability to make changes. And so I think this is the challenging thing for me when I think about Zikz. A lot of the time that he's had has been with a roster that we've now learned was not the roster long-term for us. And so I want to give him the time that I think he should to see. And for me, it's going to come down to this. And it's not, my assessment is not, are you going to do it how I want you to do it? Right? Like, are you going to listen to my rant and then change your strategy?
Sure. Yes.
It's,
as we should always point out, because no matter what we say, we are dumber than they are.
Yes. You have, as any fan of anything, you are not professionally paid to do what that person does. And sometimes, you know, almost all the time, people in sports lose their job. It's just part of the way this thing works, right? There are very few exceptions where a head coach spends their entire career somewhere. I'm thinking like Nick Saban. I'm thinking of,
and he didn't spend his entire career at Alabama. He can if he wants to from now on, but
yeah, you know, it's like those are the exceptions, right? And even those guys eventually are out the door. So, but here's what I'd say. What I want to see from him, and what I'm going to be watching very closely, is, do we start to see a style? And to be fair to him, I don't think you can really start to answer that until spring 2021, unfortunately, because this is still a roster that was kind of put together in a pretty fast fashion, and it's worked out well in a lot of ways. You know, I think he's done a good job of pivoting the whole team to this style, which allows us to pick up these really dominant and impressive wins. So I'm in the camp of, I want more time for Zikz, and I want to see what spring looks like if and when he has a chance to bring that style to a roster that is looking more like something that he's had a hand in putting together intentionally.
How dare you give someone time and patience in esports, sir?
I'm sorry.
Look, here's what I'll say about Zikz. So I've said this before. I feel like we have not seen as much of him on the heist as I would like to see. That said, from what I have seen on the heist, his interactions with the team, I actually quite like his style. I like his approach to talking with the players. Mm-hmm. The things he's saying seem great to me. And he seems to be like the kind of coach that I would want to have for my team. So I will say that. Some of the drafts, though, do, for my Silver League Legends brain, frustrate me. Like, yes. I can't say it any other way. And I'm clearly not the only one feeling that way. There's people talking about draft literally every weekend for 100 Thieves. So with that gigantic caveat that we're dumb and he's not, at the same time, like, it's a repeated thing, right? Where we feel that sometimes we just get that disadvantage, or our draft is just missing something. Mm-hmm. How much of that can we blame on like player champ pools?
Right.
I don't know. Let me it's that eternal question that we can't really satisfy, but we have to make the best judgment we can based on the information that we have available, right? If we're trying to make opinions about it. And right now it's like, I lean in the direction of there's enough where I'm cool with it. But man, I wish I could like see into the draft mind more clearly.
The draft mind. Welcome to the draft mind.
The draft mind.
Let me try to bring that to life a little bit. If any fan out there is unclear on this point, right? Like, well, why doesn't he just draft better all the time? Has he considered doing that? Then he would be a better coach. Let's just entertain this possibility for a second. Maybe there are players, and I'm literally thinking of no active players on our roster. Maybe there are players who cannot play a champion that you would love to have to really, it'd be the cherry on top of your perfect strategy. And they just can't play it for whatever reason. They're not good at it. They don't like it. They sulk and pout when you ask them to play it, for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
The coach can't change that other than, maybe like you can try to break that down, but not every player can play every champion to the same level. And kind of the only thing you can do is change that player, right? And guess when you can't do that? The week before playoffs start, right? And expect good results. So that's where I think you have to allow for that to be a real possibility as a fan, to just say, yes, the coach ultimately is accountable for the results and the outcome and the decisions that are made, but some decisions can't be made and some things can't be changed from week 8 to week 9. And for those things, you just have to give it some time.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because who will hold those people accountable is someone like Papa Smithy, right? Like, he's the one that has the same information that Zikz does, has a mind for the game, and can and is responsible for for making those decisions, right? So that's ultimately who he has to answer to.
Yep.
So I think that's where we stand on those things right now. I will say that after this weekend, it does feel a little bit like I'm settling into the new reality of where our team is, which is we're not that great. We have a crazy ceiling that we'll hit every once in a while, but we do feel like a mid-tier LCS team. And playoff run will be a road uphill, but I don't think EG is looking good. So if we draw EG in our first series, I think we could get a series win. Yeah. So it should be still an interesting playoff, and we've never seen this group in a best of 5 situation, so we don't know if maybe we can unlock something further from the strategic minds on the team or not. So that will be, I think, the remaining piece of information that we gain from playoffs. So that's really going to be what I'm focusing on.
Yep.
Now, I wanted to read a lot of this Reddit post I saw, and we'll kind of do this. Probably do this and finish. Maybe we'll lightning round some listener takes really quick, because we do have the Valorant pod in a little bit. But there's a Reddit user, Ox Stronghammer, posted a very long post, and I think it was a comment actually, where he basically did, I think, what you and I try to do sometimes, which is bring back the original context for this team from the beginning, right? So from November 2019, what the context and goals for the team were. And so I literally want to read like 80% of this guy's post word for word and just kind of let that go out there to the ether and put that out like for the fans, right?
Are we Reddit fans now?
No, I hate Reddit. That said, here's Ox Stronghammer's comment.
Okay.
He says, the messaging for the start of the year with League of Legends was trust the Papa, developing NA talent, mid lane gambles due to players and known quantities available, right? So by that last thing, he says, we took a calculated risk on Ryoma, rolling the dice to see if we could maybe get, something really special in the mid lane, because there wasn't a whole lot else that was really out there. Matter of fact, I think Pop Smithy himself said, at the end of spring, he rated Ryoma 6th or 7th in terms of ranking among mid laners, and that was something they were well aware of, So I said that on Hotline League, I believe. Okay, so back to the post. It says, it sucks where we've been at the last few weeks on the Rift. But the foundation work for what 100T is doing looks incredible. 100T next, Kelsey in the Academy roster.
Shout out Kelsey.
Shout out Kelsey. Now with NA locked for Worlds 2022, I would say the long-term goal behind the scenes is probably 3 top-tier league teams when NA are hosting in terms of main roster, academy, and developing. So they aren't looking to get too drastic. Okay, that's fair. He says, we all have our frustrations with how the main roster looks in the last few weeks, and the enemy teams really play around our holes. Some of the other things said, bait Zikz to lock Ornn, because teams lock it against us to reduce Ssumday slapping their top lane. And we've never swapped it mid, even when Ornn was busted, taking away a lot of our firepower and pressure on the map top. Rookie support and mid are potentially exploitable due to experience and playstyle. Cody occasionally slumps. And so support the boys. They have enough haters right now. Take what's not given, Poome gang trust to pop up. So while I will say I don't think it's like the most like coherently written thing. I think the points that he's making are good ones, which is remember what the original stakes and goal were here. That this was going to be a fairly experimental year. And we knew that going into it. And we were betting on some principles rather than betting on actual results, right? And largely a lot of those things have come to fruition. We are better than we were in 2019, provably, and we look better positioned for the future. Yeah. Okay. And he does point out the team has obvious weaknesses, obvious flaws, and teams are able to exploit those flaws, but we're going to give them our support in the meantime, right? He says they have enough haters right now. And I think that's great. You know, that's exactly right. So that I just read that comment and I was like, what a nice reminder of like where we started, because we're so frustrated with where we are at the moment that I think we forgot where we came from.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll add to that is let's not forget that we're basically 1 win away against Dig to feeling, I think to me, feeling almost content, right? And satisfied that we've made meaningful progress, that we've landed in the upper bracket. Like this isn't the case. So I still do feel like this, sense of disappointment to some degree, but it was close, right? It was close. And it's important to not lose sight of that, right? Like this is progress, even if it is imperfect and flawed in some ways, it's still progress. And there's still tons more progress that we need to chase and be hungry for, but we're better than we were, right? We're better than we were. And we certainly have a stronger foundation on which to build, especially if you're thinking about Worlds 2022. Here we come. I didn't know that they'd already locked people in for it, but I'm glad to hear that
Worlds 2022.
Yeah.
No, he's great. Saying NA like that's where it will be played.
Oh, gotcha. NA. NA is locked in for 2022.
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
I thought he was just saying, look, 100 Next is so good. How could we not?
Well, maybe I misread his point. So, but I will say, the 100 Next prospects look crazy. So,
and also appreciate that well thought through and insightful Reddit post. Well
done. So let's call it there. I think that's a good note to end on. So sorry for listener takes. We went a little long on some other stuff, so we're gonna bypass those for now. Just know that your dads still love you, even if we didn't address your take tonight.
And though most
of the stuff, we read them all, and most of the stuff we actually did hit for the most part on along the way. So there's that. But
do you want to do predictions really quick before we go, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we kind of already did this to some extent, but do we want to here? We can bring up and look at the playoff bracket really quick. I don't think we need to predict any like all the other stuff that's going on, but here's a look at the playoff bracket as it stands right now. I don't think you guys can see my cursor on this screen, so I apologize. But looking up at the top at this FlyQuest and Evil Genius matchup, that is the key matchup for us to watch. The loser of that series, we will play in our first matchup. So, I mean, Jordan, as I said before, Evil Geniuses just does not look like the team right now. Mm-hmm. And I think FlyQuest has outperformed my expectations. And it's not just they, got lucky in some games. Like they actually look to be pretty good a lot of the time. So it's hard for me to see Evil Geniuses taking them down. So I do think that we get Evil Geniuses in the first round, which is nice because I feel like we can beat those dudes. And important, building off of that finish that we just had against them, where it's basically a demoralizing loss for them. That puts us in a good position, and if we know our team's strengths, then potentially we can really focus on them. Maybe Evil Geniuses does not have quite the time to prepare for us, since they're going to have just 2 days in between their match with FlyQuest and their match with us. So I honestly like our chances against EG a lot, and remember, they're only 1 seed above us. So it's not like it's this huge upset if we beat them or whatever. In fact, I would argue that it's probably not an upset at this point.
Yeah, certainly given if you're looking at recency, I would agree.
If we advance past that part, we are going to get the loser of Cloud9 and either TSM and Golden Guardians. And that is not great for us because TSM always has our number. Golden Guardians, this split, has definitively had our number. And then Cloud9's the other option. So, you know,
all right.
Honestly, it's looking for me personally like that's the end of our road. So that's going to be my prediction, Jordan. Your thoughts?
Yep. Yeah, I like that. 1 series win. I think if we get TSM, Bjergsen is still Bjergsen. And so that's not going to likely go in our favor just because I don't know why exactly, but we can't beat him. Here's my sliver of optimism. If it's there, Cole, it's because we fully embrace this aggressive playstyle and we just find a way to make it happen no matter what. And that's what I'm going to be hoping for and watching for.
You know, and we will take your optimism and amplify it by 10 times with Papa Smithy's optimism in chat, who says we will win 8 best of 5s in a row. That will make us world champions.
There you go.
You know,
he's done the math already. He knows what it takes.
And what a great time for me to look behind me. Trust the Papa. Trust the Papa. And I'll have you guys know, as an additional little aside, I should have tweeted this, but I went into Tim from Oracle Elixir's Discord today and bribed him a little bit to make sure that he predicts 100 Thieves winning the first series in playoffs. So we've got that going for us as well. Tim's a smart dude.
Did he do it?
He did.
So it shall be. I
screenshotted it. Yeah, that's right. He even said, and I'm not making this up, that he will guarantee that Faker makes it to 100 Thieves. So we're looking very good position. That bribe, looking to pay off massively.
Oh, I didn't realize, 1, he had the power, and 2, that we had the pockets.
You know, Tim has all power.
He's all knowing. He cannot actually make them do turret CS as a stat. We have found the limit of his power.
Gosh, when are we going to get turret CS? I really want that so bad. All right.
I'm telling you, man, it predicts accurately like 90% of games.
This is the time where we've clearly gone off the rails enough that we know we need to end this show. So everyone, what a ride this split has been. Regular season, it's all over. Putting it all behind us. We are what we are now. And what we are is looking like we're going to win against EG in our first playoff series. So let's just take it slow. Let's get that dub. I think that's Sunday was that game, the 16th. Yeah, so that should be Sunday. And I look forward to speaking to you guys next week when we have beaten them and are looking for our next round matchup.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome. As always, we love you and we miss you already. Stick around for our Valorant podcast little after 10, probably on the start time, but give us a little bit to switch over and we'll talk about 100 Thieves Valorant. Looking forward to it.
All right. No raid. See you then.
All right. Love you guys.